adorned him with a shimmering mane? Did you create him to prance proudly and strike terror with his royal snorts? He paws the ground fiercely, eager and spirited, then charges into the fray. He laughs at danger, is fearless, and doesn't shy away from the sword. The banging and clanging of quiver and lance don't faze him. He quivers with excitement, and at the trumpet blast races off at a gallop. At the sound of the trumpet, he neighs mightily, smelling the excitement of battle from a long way off, catching the rolling thunder of the war cries.
Good afternoon from England. There's two of us here today from the British Isles. I'm fortunate, gosh, I can't even speak properly, to be here with Bernie Andrews from Colchester, a little bit away from where I am right now, but so far the internet is working and I can see you and hear you. How are you doing, Bernie?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Like you, I had a really good night's sleep last night. And woke up very refreshed. So I've had just a morning, just doing some things and sort of catching up on things and thinking about today and this afternoon. So yeah, very good, thank you.
Wow, it's a little bit cooler today. Hello, Carolyn, who is in Munich, and Sarah, who is in Norwich. And those of you who haven't said hello, but we see you. Hello, hello, hello. God bless you. We are going to have a bit of a lighthearted day today. I think that's sort of how I've planned it in my head. And we're just going to do some Q&A and not deep diving into any theological discussions. I know a while back I said to some people on my team, I would love to have some questions and do a Q&A. And then I was instantly asked this deep theological question. And I read the question and I was so, I just thought, oh, I cannot do a broadcast about that. It's far too much hard work. And I thought they would ask questions like, how many children do you have? And do your children think you're a nutcase for being a prophet? And, you know, all of that kind of thing. That's what I had in my mind, because that's the kind of thing I watch on YouTube, but it didn't happen. So anyway, today we've got a list of questions. Some of them are from myself, some of them are from others, and I've asked Bernie if he would be willing to join me in this. And yeah, what do you think of that, Bernie? Do you think it's a crazy idea or what?
Well, probably crazy, but good to do anyway, I think. Why not? Why not? I think there are a lot of questions actually like this that come, and you can very much sort of get very, very overly serious about it. But actually, sometimes being less serious about it actually is more profound, actually, than trying to give clever answers all the time. So
it's true. And the other thing that's fantastic is that we don't have to have all the answers. That's
exactly.
You know, it's a misconception about prophetic life that you have to have all the answers for everything, because you don't. And Jesus is the one who holds all truth. And really a person's best teacher is Holy Spirit, according to scriptures. So, you know, they need to seek things out for themselves too. And that's really, really important. So let me start off with a question. I'm going to throw one out here for you, Bernie. Whatever inspired you to sort of pursue Christ or pursue the prophetic? Was there a moment when you thought, I want to run after that?
Well, it's very interesting because it probably happened about 30 years ago, which is a long time ago. But I do remember somebody, well, 3 people actually prophesying over me, one in 3 different locations about being a prophet. And I often say, well, it took God 3 times to tell me about being a prophet before I actually thought, well, I suppose I better take notice of this now. And I think it was because it was sort of quite new. You know, the prophetic was quite new in those days, and prophets weren't really well established except in a few areas. And so I was really pretty much had to rely on Jesus, Holy Spirit, and the Father really to get me
Oh
through.
dear.
Well, yeah, I know. I know, and I say that to myself now. Well, you still do, Bernie, you still do. But in those
Yeah.
days, there was nobody to mentor me. There was nobody to help me, and I really just had to sort of almost do my own research on some things and things like that. Which actually, I think now, I think you did good. I did well there because I actually did find out myself rather than get influenced by the popularity even of the day. I had to find out for myself how it was with God and how to prophesy and just trust him on those sorts of things. So I think that's really how it started with me, and I'm grateful for God that he actually did teach me those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. So what have you found has been the most challenging aspect of your role, like as a prophet? Or, can you articulate that? Or have there been a bunch of challenges? What's been the toughest?
Do you know what? For me, it's not to perform.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Not to perform, because I've been in situations where people sort of say, oh, you're prophetic or you're the prophet. What have you got to say? And
Yeah.
I say to people, and I've said to myself all the time, do you know what? I've got nothing to say unless God says it. I have nothing to say. This is the thing with being prophets or being prophetic. We rely on what God says.
Yeah.
That's where our inspiration. We're not like teachers, really. We're not like teachers or pastors, evangelists who can bring things out of the revelation that they've got. And we do get revelation, I get that, but they can go and they can study and they can bring something. But if God is saying something, that's what we need to hear, and that's what we bring. And if he doesn't say something, keep your mouth shut. So for me, that's my biggest challenge. Am I performing? Am I just entertaining? Or really, am I bringing what I genuinely feel God is saying? And that's kind of my...
That's so good. That's a big challenge, I think, to everyone in this day and age who's in prophetic ministry, to not perform and to give themselves to that. It's very easy to do because of our culture, the celebrity culture that we live in. The other day, a week or so ago, I was praying for someone who's in a life and death situation, and the Lord spoke 2 words to me, and it turned out that I wrote them those words and explained to them what I felt the Lord was saying about them. And that prophetic word, even though it made no sense to me, it had a significant impact and brought life into a situation where death was possible. So I'm saying that because I'm wondering if there's anything or any place you can point to where a prophecy you gave had a significant impact like that. Like not the same impact, but an impact that was big.
Yes, I do. I think, Rebecca, one of the things, because I carry this Father's anointing, for people, and I see how God, and I do it because it just comes out of me, really. Sometimes I don't know I'm doing it, but I do feel this fathering over some people. And I remember prophesying over a young man at church years ago, and he was probably still in his teens, and I prophesied over him leadership and influence and worship and all of those things. And it was one of those situations where you speak over people like that, and because they're so young, they don't really take it in. But his mum was there, and they then subsequently left the church, but they came back about 8 years later, and he was, because he'd come back to the church, he'd come back to Kingston Church, and he was leading the youth. He was leading worship. He had this leadership authority about him that was really cutting edge. And his mum said to me, he said that you prophesied over him all those years ago at a time when nothing of that was evident. Nothing of that was clearly manifest in his life. In fact, it was completely the opposite. He was a very shy young man and full of insecurities. So I remember that so well. And every time somebody comes up to me and says, "You said this," "No, you said that," and it's come true, I'm always grateful to God, and always thrilled actually that God has established those sorts of things in their life, and they've heard it and they've listened to it and they've obeyed it. So I think that was probably, for me, that's probably one of the most satisfying things that God showed me over that young man, and to see him thriving in that is wonderful, really. Yeah.
It's moments like those, when you have them, that you have this encounter with Holy Spirit and you realize, oh, this is what I was made for. And you can have long periods where that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, some people will deny that that's possible, that you should constantly be having those moments. But for me, it doesn't happen that way. And even when it does, when I do receive a word that ends up being significant for someone, I'm always surprised. And I love that because I realize then that the Lord himself keeps childlike wonder alive in me, and that's healthy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a kind of prophet who walks around, with my head in the clouds, thinking that I am just this person you can press a button and out is going to come, the magnificent word of the Lord. First of all, I'm not a Nabi prophet, and so it doesn't work like that for me. And so it is important to recognize, I think, when, and to give thanks for when you have a moment like that, where the word of the Lord hits the mark. You didn't even know what the mark was, and you certainly didn't understand the word. I love that. What about when people are skeptical, Bernie? What do you do with that?
Do you know what? Maybe it's my character, but I don't get too bothered, to be honest, because I think I really have to trust that it's God, really, and I just have to be honest about that. And if I'm wrong, I'll say I was wrong, and I'll clear up my mess, as you said once. If we get it wrong, clear it up. But I will, if somebody says to me, if they have a doubt on it and I really trust them and I know them and I know they have my best interest, then I will think, then obviously I will go back to God and I will discuss it with them and say, okay, if I've got this wrong, then I need to say that I got this wrong. And I've had to do that on occasion. I've had to say something like that and apologize to people and say, look, I really got that wrong. I'm really, really sorry. But I think I feel that I have to distinguish that from skepticism and unbelief in people, because those sorts of people will never be convinced. They will have an agenda that is always, you prove it to me, sort of thing. And it's almost like, well, I've got to prove something to them before they'll even do anything. And I think skepticism is a very, very dangerous thing. I think it's very closely aligned with rebellion and all that sort of thing, and unbelief, which is, and skepticism is unbelief in its ugliest form, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to recognize what is skepticism, or people just simply not really understanding and not getting what it is, getting what I'm saying. But I've always said
English culture is really skeptical and cynical and full of mockery, actually. And we think it's funny to be like that. And it's something that needs to be driven out from our midst. Scripturally, if you read Psalm 1, we know that. And so it's something we have to be really on guard about, I believe. Let's go after humility, and how you maintain humility and integrity in this marketing world, like we live in this prophetic bubble, if you will, where marketing, the prophetic voice, happens all the time, multiple times a day. And everything is for sale in the prophetic world right now, and which is tragic. Even mailing lists. That's putting it mildly. What do you do about that, Bernie?
Well, I go back to Micah 6 and verse 8. Because I said to God, I said, God, what do you want? Because I literally said to God, I said, God, what do you want of me one day? What do you want of me? And he said, I want Micah 6, verse 8 for you. I want you to, I want you to walk humbly with me. I want you to love, and I want you to love justice and work humbly before me. So I think, well, that's very simple in a way. 3 brilliant things. And all God wants me to do is that. And everything seems to, for me, if I work those things through out in the situations that I come into, then I don't know that I'm going too far wrong, really. So that's kind of where I do. And it was great what God said to me on that occasion, because I suppose I was expecting some, it's like we were saying before, sometimes I was expecting some, great theological answer that would come, and God says, well, I just want you to walk humbly before me, really, love justice and be kind. And and I think that's really important, because I think the thing with the prophetic is we've built too many celebrity prophets, really, which has done the body of Christ, I don't think, any good at all. Celebrity status and queuing up for their signatures and queuing up for their photographs. And I think, do you know what? It's not really what it's about, is it? I don't know.
It is. It is, sadly.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not.
Yeah. So that's kind of, that's where I go on these things. And Margaret says to me, my wife, she says, oh, Benny, there are times when people want to say thank you to you and you sort of feel a bit awkward about it and you sort of like push back on it. And I think, do a bit. And she's right. And I need to sort of work on those things a little bit.
Right.
Because
there is a correct honoring.
I know there is. Yeah. And I need to think a bit. I need to sort of be able to say thank you if somebody says genuinely thank you, and not get embarrassed about it. But there you go.
Oh, it can be so difficult. It's not easy for everyone. Like I know too, we had, you were there up in London the other day, and then people are coming there and they're lining up to say thank you to you for, whatever it was that they were thankful about. And it is a bit embarrassing, it's like, oh, for goodness sakes. But it's learning to have grace. And I often think about, someone asked Bill Johnson how he managed to do that. And he said, God had just given him a grace. Yeah. And so I just keep saying, Lord, keep giving me the grace, keep giving me the grace. I remember one time as well, when I was in California, 39 people at a conference came and asked me if I was related to Patricia King. And I was so annoyed. And I was like, no, I am not related to Patricia King. And blah, 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 blah. And I said to the Lord, how come people keep asking me that? We don't even look alike. And he said, I'm going to keep having them ask you that until you learn to answer with grace. Yeah. And I was like, oh, and now it still happens on occasion. And even if I have dyed my hair red or something, I'll still get asked that. And I'm able to answer with grace. So there is something about God giving you what you need for something. He's trying to work things out in your life, right? Through what you say and what you do, and how you handle Thanksgiving and how you handle praise in a good way.
Yeah. And it's encouraging, isn't it, to know that actually I got that right. There's nothing. I love it when I think that, I think, oh, thank you, God, because I got that right. I'm glad that's right, and that was good, and somebody's been helped, and as that to me is the greatest thing that I can feel, that somebody was blessed. Somebody was not just blessed, but somebody was really moved and motivated to go after Jesus in a bigger way and in a greater way. To me, that's the best thing. So, so yeah, so that's how I love it, really. But that thing about handling it with grace is so important, and to be able to accept that in good stead, is in good heart, is the right way to do it. So I'm learning on that one, chaps. All right.
We're all learning. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, if anyone says to me that this isn't an issue for them, then I think they have problems and they're walking in arrogance, because you know what? We can all learn more about that. And the other thing that's interesting, just like there's different love languages, there are different forgiveness languages, there are different ways of saying thanks to people. There's different ways of giving praise to people that people are able to receive. There's a whole kind of cultural thing around this kind of communication that all of us could do with learning a bit about. And then we would stop demanding that people do things our way, and we could tap into how they are communicating and then just leave it at that. So, there's always something to learn about that kind of thing. Let's go to the question that we both laughed at before when we were in the green room together. Let's do it. What message do you believe God is emphasizing to the church in this season? What do you think?
Well, if we're talking global church, I don't know.
Why don't you know, Bernie?
Well, because I don't think there's any one particular prophecy that would suit that fits every single church. I think.
Well, wow, that's so good.
And I think that different churches have different aspects. They have different emphasis. They have different priorities. They have different visions and things like that. And to go into a church and say you need to be like this, and you need to be walking like this, to fulfill what God is saying to you, I'm not sure that really works. It's not really works. I think we can bring corrective words. I think that's a different thing. And I think we can bring corrective words to church. Like I would say at the moment that for many in the church, it needs a complete reset, because I think in some ways it's gone after performance rather than worship, real worship. And I was thinking about this morning, and I thought church either has an altar or it has a stage. And I think that there needs to be some radical resets in the way church is worshiping God these days. Because if it's just sort of thinking that worship is like a performance with lights, smoke machines, and great sort of worship bands and things like that, it's missed it. And even we have a sort of small fellowship on a Tuesday, and what we said in our house, and what we said right at the start was, this is his place.
Yeah.
His place. And if it's his place, then he can do whatever he wants. So that's what we do. Our worship isn't brilliant. Sorry, love. It is. It's really good. Sorry, she's right here by next to me. I mean, our worship is not sophisticated, let me say. That's what I mean. And we sing some old
Let's
songs.
dig some holes, Bernie. Let's dig some holes.
I know, dig. But actually, the way God comes into a place, because we've made it his place, and because we've said, God, you can do whatever you like, he comes. And we say, if we ask him in, he will come. And it makes such a radical difference. And I just think the basic of that is that it's his place and we worship him, and everything is focused on him, and it's not focused on him. and then he comes, and then he comes in such brilliant, beautiful ways. So if I was to say anything to the church right now, is to have a radical think about how you're doing worship. Do you have an altar, or do you have a stage? That's what I would say.
Ooh, that's a good word. Do you have an altar or do you have a stage?
Yeah.
They are not synonymous.
They're not the
They
same.
are not the same.
They are not the same. They are not the same.
And
So,
you can have tremendous worship and it can be really meaningful and popular, but if it is not what God has asked for, then you're burning, you're lighting strange fire or bringing strange fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I maybe that's why I feel that God is, calling us, just let me in. Let me have my place. Let me have my place. If you will let me have my place, if you will let me do what I want to do rather than what you think I should do, because I think preference is another thing. People have a preference of the kind of God that they want, and a God in their own image, and I actually think it's quite a demonic thing, actually, where we make God in our own image. It's always been there. You see it in Tower of Babel, and you see it over and over again in the Old Testament. Golden calves and things like that, where people have decided they want a God in their own image and suits their own preference, and that's the God we'll worship. It's not. It's not godly. It's not a godly thing at all. So, having said I don't know, that's what I think.
So you knew more than you knew.
I do know. Once I get going.
Well, you've got your opinion and ideas about this, and this is what God wants us to bring to the table, is our opinions, our ideas and thoughts, and people can agree or disagree, and together we can talk about it and come to some kind of conclusion or idea or find a vein of truth. The thing that is upsetting about the prophetic world that I'm involved in so often is that we get with our prophets and we get with our prophet friends and we really think that we have an edge on truth and we have an edge on revelation, and we we learn certain phrases and we speak them out, and we do things a certain way, and God, I believe, it feels to me that has been the carpet we've been walking on for far too long, and I can hear in my spirit this sound of the edges of a carpet being ripped up. And it's not that he's removing the floor from under our feet, but he's moving the things, he's ripping up from the things that from under our feet that we say so easily, or we've been just walking on, and I hear that where the glue that has glued these ideas to our flooring it's just not holding any longer. And it's not that anyone of us set out to be like that. It just happens when you live in these kind of bubbles. And when you're in the prophetic world, unless you are intentional about being outside of the prophetic world, this happens to you. It happens to anyone. You go to a Bible school for 3 years, that you come out and your world falls apart because you don't know any longer how to relate to the real world around you. And that, I think, happens to us prophets. And I hear God moving some things about and changing things. And that actually might affect the way we listen to God and how we hear the things that he's saying. So how do you discern God's voice amidst, all of the strong prophetic voices that are out there? I mean, you're part of a prophetic company, you're part of several. How do you discern the true voice of the Spirit of God when this voice is saying this, or this voice is saying that, or you see something written on the subway wall that is the word of the Lord? How do you then grab a hold of it and walk that way?
I do two things. I have to seek and listen to that still small voice of God, really. And that means that what I have to do in that is that I have to still and quieten myself, because there is, as you say, there's so much noise around, so many noises, so many voices, so many opinions, so many demands from people, and people demanding this and people demanding that and people demanding their rights. And I just have to find myself, I have to go in, even into, in myself, spiritually in myself, and just still my own soul so I can hear that still small voice of God. And that's how I do it. That's how I do it. I do actually try and be really observant of things around me, and sometimes by what people say around me, even if they don't know they're saying. I remember just hearing somebody at a maintenance group that we were in, they said, "My work here is done." And I thought, that's it. And I felt that. We felt that about the situation that we were in. Our work here is done. And that was one of the pointers for us, sort of moving table, as it were. But I think those are the sorts of things that we need to tune ourselves into as well, to be aware of what God is saying, even in the small things of life as well as the big things. What is he saying? How is he saying it? How is he communicating it? And I guess that's, for me, is how I do it. I listen. I try and listen for that still small voice of God, and hear what he says. And that means I need to be in a place where actually I'm still myself. My spirit is stilled myself, so that I can actually hear that. So I look for those places. I look for those stillness. I observe as well. I was wondering. I was wondering if I could ask you a question, actually.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
go ahead.
What do you think are the biggest challenges you face in prophetic ministry today?
Okay, well, probably the biggest challenges that I face personally come out of some of the things I carry. So one of the biggest challenges is working together with other prophetic groups. I'm not talking about other ministries that aren't necessarily prophetic, but trying to get prophets to work together is a real challenge. There's 101 reasons for that. We tend to be quite territorial, even though we like to say we're not. We tend to like to work with people that we've trained, even though we say we don't. We tend to have trust issues because, we know that we trained that one in that way, and so they're going to do it the way we want them to. There's just a difficulty with people to recognize how we can complement each other rather than doing it all ourselves. So for me, that is probably, in this day and age, the biggest challenge that I face. And like I said, that comes from what I'm burning with right now. There are probably lesser challenges, but I don't even want to be distracted by those. I want to pursue what I believe is possible. And I've gone down wrong roads with this as well, so I've learned a lot in that journey. But I just wish that we could make space for each other instead of just saying there's room for everyone, but that we could actually make space, that I could have the courage and the decency and the humility to let someone in and just go, please, you do this better than me. Come sit here at this table and do your thing, and vice versa, that we could do that for each other. I think it's the way forward.
Yeah. I love that. You do these things better than me, so you come and do it. I love that, really. And I think that's a really humble and gracious thing to do, because it means that your ego is not dominant in your decision making or in your place, or because ego is one of those things that says, well, if I let him in, if I let them loose in this, then where am I going to be in this? And I think it's a real humble thing to do, is to recognize that other people, can actually do things better than you can. So yeah, it's real.
That's how come Heather and I can work together so easily, because I recognize in her what she can do. I have absolutely no ability to do those things, but she also recognizes in me what my gifting is and where I can be the arrowhead. Hi, Marguerite. I see you there, popping in for a minute to listen. Good to see you.
Yeah,
it's important that we recognize this. And what you say about this shows that you don't have ego. That's also interesting, because I know that the way I'm wired, my personality is I'm a high D and a high I on the DISC test. So that means I'm driven, I'm dominant, I'm an influencer. Those things are important, and those things are important. I need to operate that way in order for things to flow with ease. But at the same time, the Lord has tempered that, absolutely tempered that. And I've realized through God allowing me to be broken, my desperate need of other people and my desperate need of the next person's gifts, instead of trying to be this smart, I shouldn't say that word. I was going to say smart ass, that kind of person. Yes, Caroline, I'm an Enneagram 8. Isn't that awful? It's just the worst thing, unless the Spirit of the Lord just fixes you up and molds you and makes you pliable. And he does that for all of us. And that's also why it's important that we know each other after the Spirit. So someone years ago said, listen to the prophecies over this person's life and this person's life, instead of saying, oh, well, I don't like their personality and they're so bossy, or they're this, or they're too, this way or that way, because you're just rattling off and reacting to them out of what you like and dislike. Listen to what God has to say about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Style is something, but actually anointing is a different thing altogether.
So there you go.
Well, there we are. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's stop. It's 37 minutes in, and I'm sure people are already laughing at some of the things we come up to discussing. But you know what? I needed a day. Sorry, everybody. I needed a day with some lighthearted chat and talk about what it's actually like to live a prophet's life and prophetic life, instead of thinking, okay, I got to dig deep. We've been having some really, God's been speaking some deep things into us, and we've been walking with that. And sometimes we just need to be regular folks. So I'm going to have a good evening. What about you, Bernie?
I don't know. I don't know what we're doing.
I'm silent.
What are we doing tonight? There's something happening tonight. I can't remember.
It's something Thursday night. Maybe, a bicycle ride down to the local pub.
Well,
maybe you should walk. Maybe
Actually, we've had 2 good days with some friends of ours down the local pub, which has been really good, actually. It's been really good to catch up with people. So we might just have a night in tonight and just chill out a bit. I might cook. That'll be
I'm going to take a walk down the street to the local Sainsbury's.
Oh, right. Well,
that's about as exciting as it gets. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. It's been so good to see you on here, and we've had a good chat. And hello, Michelle. I see you as well. Colleen, and I think you're in Calgary. And Teresa, I see you in Kenya. People are here from all over. So God bless all of you. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.